Carlos Slim has held on to his crown as the top, excuse me, of the Forbes list of billionaires. As expected, the mobile phone tycoon beat out Bill Gates, we told you about that last night, who landed in second place. But if you look overall, the 2011 list has set new records for the overall number of billionaires and their total net worth. Join me in the study over here, and you will see what I mean. As we look at the world's billionaires, first of all, we need to define what do we mean by a billionaire. Well, at one with 9 zeros, 1,210 in total. Not only of that, as we look at that 1,210, we can see some particularly impressive things. 47 people dropped off the list, 10 dropped off the earth, and 42 roared back up to top ranking. But where are these billionaires? I'll show you. First of all, in the United States, with over 400 of them, including the youngest, one of the founders of Facebook, who's just 26 years old. 26 and a billionaire. Don't you love him? Europe has 300, including the oldest on the list, who is from Switzerland, Walter Hafner, who is over 100 years old. But it's really over in Asia. Asia Pacific, which has 332, and most important, this is the number, 80% growth that is in China. Not surprisingly, the list is particularly impressive as the shift has taken place from the west across to the east. So all billionaires are not equal, because it's not just enough to have 1 billion. For example, Carlos Slim, massive at 74 billion. So he is clearly the number one. But relative size over here, Alfred Mann. Alfred Mann has just $1 billion. When you put that together, you start to see how the billionaires, even within themselves, stack up amongst each other. Now, that's the way the billionaires look. And as I say, I'm not one of them. But I spoke to Steve Forbes himself, and I asked him what we learn from things like the billionaires list.
Well, what it tells us is that part of the global economy is moving ahead, either because of the growth we've seen in China and India in the past and in the present. Also, the commodities boom is reflected in these numbers as well. You know, when an economy grows, it just doesn't grow. People have to make it happen. Entrepreneurs have to make it happen. And that's what this list reflects. People who are doers, achievers, making expansions possible. And we see that the momentum is with Asia right now and with commodity countries, while the U.S. and Western Europe, not so good.
And if we look, of course, we see in the top 20 names, with one exception, everybody else saw their wealth increase. At a time of austerity, doesn't that merely reinforce the view that the rich always get richer and the rest of us get the short end?
No, what it tells you, one, is that the number of successful entrepreneurs is rising up, particularly in Asia. That's why they're moving ahead. It also tells us that the global economy is, in many parts of the world, getting back on its feet. That's good news. And so the rest of us who aren't moving ahead ought to be asking, what are the obstacles that are in the way? I can give you a whole litany here in North America and the United States, and I'm sure you can in the UK and elsewhere.
We'll get to politics in 1 second. Just staying with the list. Whenever I read rich lists, part of me has this almost frustration and anxiety that one wants to be part of that uber rich or to have that sort of wealth. It's an understandable human reaction, perhaps.
Well, these are people who have done some extraordinary things. This fellow Wilson from Canada, whoever thought that starting yoga places would stretch to making him a billionaire? Took something that's very common, yoga, and made it a successful business, just as Schultz did years ago with Starbucks. So it's that ability to innovate, see a need, whether it's in things like commodities, oil and gas and the like, retailing, high technology, pharmaceuticals. The new rich man in China, Li, did it in pharmaceuticals. Now it wasn't even near the list a year ago, now worth $5.7 billion. These are people who are making things happen, and that's what this list points out. Sections of the world that are doing well, areas that are doing well, and areas that aren't doing as well.
Right, and if we look, for example, at the top two, and nothing's changed there. Carlos Slim still number one, Bill Gates number two. But the phenomenal, ferocious resources that those men have at their disposal, it's quite extraordinary.
It is, until you realize that governments make them look like pygmies. U.S., $15 trillion economy, $58 billion barely gets you a cup of coffee in that respect. So what is remarkable about these people is that they are able to achieve great things, and their success means our success. Warren Buffett has saved a lot of companies, but put them back on the right track again, got them to expand. Larry Ellison, same thing in software and elsewhere. So these are people who enable us to enjoy a better life. They're not just sitting home eating bonbons and counting their gold bars.